So you quit porn, and now your dick feels dead and your sex drive is gone? Listen, the problem isn't in your pants, it's in your brain. This is the FLATLINE. What's up everybody, my name is Gabe Deem and this is the Reboot Nation. This channel is dedicated to helping people recover from porn problems and raising awareness on them, like addiction and sexual dysfunctions. Now, one of the most common questions we get in regards to recovery has to do with what is called the flatline. A flatline is a period of time where you feel a complete drop or a loss of libido. Your sex drive vanishes. Guys often say it feels like their dick dies. I think this guy sums it up rather nicely. After a few days of brain tantrums, cravings, I went into a flatline for weeks. Basically, I felt totally indifferent about girls, sex, everything. A little voice from the porn beast nagged at me in the back of my mind, but mostly I just didn't care. And my penis was very lifeless and small. It was like somebody just pulled the plug on whatever machine provides my sex drive. No libido at all. A little reboot movement history for you. In the mid to late 2000s, the first guys to show up and document their recoveries and their success stories were typically older and often recovered from porn-induced sexual dysfunctions and low libido in about 6 to 8 weeks. But then something unexpected happened. Younger guys started showing up and taking longer and longer to recover and experienced really long flatlines. I was one of those guys. In 2011, when I was 23, otherwise healthy, my porn use ended up giving me a limp noodle. My recovery was hands down the worst period of my life. I was in a flatline for 6 months, and for the first 3 months I couldn't feel any recovery at all, and I couldn't even get an erection for sex, even with Viagra and Cialis. I started to see some progress around 3 months. I started getting morning wood again, nocturnal erections, and that progressively got better and better with time. Then around month 6, I felt some libido come back and I tried for sex again and still failed. It was absolutely terrifying, frustrating, and depressing. However, I was seeing some more improvement. At this point, I was able to get an erection for oral sex and I had some orgasms that way. But every time I would do that, I would go back into a flatline for what felt like a couple weeks. But as time went on, the duration of those flatlines kept decreasing. And then, around 9 months after quitting porn, I recovered and I got through it. And I believe we can all get through it.
We cannot defeat
the flatline.
We can't.
So William.
And we will.
Now, why in the world would young guys go into a flatline with no libido and a lifeless penis simply from quitting porn? Why would a 20-year-old take longer to recover from porn-induced ED than a 50-year-old? That's completely backwards from what you would expect. What causes the flatline? We don't know for sure, as it hasn't been studied, but the science behind the adolescent brain, sexual conditioning, and the neuroscience behind addiction can all help explain it. Let's look at some possible causes of the flatline, and then I'll give you some of the best advice successful rebooters have found helpful. Is the flatline due to busting too many nuts? What traditional Chinese medicine would call sexual exhaustion. If the flatline were only a couple days to a couple weeks, this might make some sense. Animal studies do show that ejaculating a bunch, or in scientific terms, to the point of satiation, meaning you don't want any more, does result in a period of time where libido drops. Rats become uninterested in sex for several days. It's like a longer than normal refractory period, which is the period of time after ejaculation where a man cannot get another erection. The researchers said it could be thought that the long-lasting sexual inhibition resulting from copulation to satiation,
busting all kinds of nuts,
constitutes a protective mechanism against overstimulation of the brain circuits involved in its processing. Now, there are several reasons why this does not explain the flatline, but the main one is that younger guys in their teens and 20s often take longer to recover than guys in their 50s. This alone rules out rat-like exhaustion as the cause of long flatlines. And to rule out another myth that floats around in the manosphere, Neither ejaculating a bunch nor abstaining and storing up your man juice for a long time has any long-term impact on blood testosterone levels. The benefits felt from quitting porn and rebooting appear to be more dopamine related and not hormonal. Overtaxing the reward circuit in the brain appears to be the problem, not a lack of testosterone. With that said, always consult your doctor to rule out physiological causes. If everything checks out fine with the doc, keep on trucking with the reboot. Is the flatline simply a withdrawal symptom from being addicted to porn? It can certainly play a role. When any addict quits an addiction, predictable neurochemical and cellular changes take place in specific brain regions. The neurochemical changes behind withdrawal may include a decrease in dopamine and an increase in stress chemicals CRF and norepinephrine. This combo can kill libido temporarily. A pleasure response that's numbed and inhibited by stress may not provide sufficient stimulation to the brain's erection centers. More on the erection centers in a minute. And yes, multiple studies in the last couple years have found withdrawal symptoms in porn addicts. Again, such symptoms may explain shorter flatlines that last a couple weeks to a couple months, but we know flatlines can last several months, much longer than withdrawal symptoms typically last. So let's look at another possibility, the current prevailing theory behind the flatline, and the one that makes the most sense in my opinion, sexual conditioning. What if young guys often take longer to recover than older guys because they deeply sexually condition themselves all during their adolescence? The adolescent brain is way more malleable than an adult brain. Around ages 10 to 13, the brain goes through drastic neuronal growth and then drastic neuronal pruning. Unused circuits, possibly the very circuits that were meant to motivate you to pursue a real loving partner, tend to weaken. Meanwhile, circuits that are wiring arousal to screens are getting a workout and becoming stronger and more efficient. Remember this, when nerve cells fire together, they wire together. The neural pathways that are used for porn become stronger and better insulated with what is called myelin, that increases the speed of nerve impulses. And little branches called dendrites sprout out to better hear related signals. This deep learning can be like a super memory of pleasure. Key brain circuits will light up when you see something related to your porn use, triggering cravings and horniness. Neuroscientists call this cue reactivity sensitization.
So what I'm saying in a nutshell is nerve cells for porn get stronger and nerve cells for a real partner get weaker.
Teenagers' brains respond to exciting stimuli with 2 to 4 times the reward circuit activation compared to an adult brain because they're far more sensitive to dopamine. They're also less sensitive to aversion and can handle more stimulation before they burn out. And on top of that, the prefrontal cortex, the decision-making part of the brain, won't fully develop for another decade. Basically, a teenager's brain is all gas with crappy brakes. Unlike the older guys who grew up using magazines, their imagination, and had some sexual experience before they got into internet porn, young people today are exclusively wiring the arousal template in their brain to constant shock, surprise, and unlimited novelty delivered via a screen. As my man, my guide, the godfather, the legend, Sir Gary Wilson, and author of Your Brain on Porn, likes to say, young people today are training for the wrong sport. Gary also has a theory that I agree with, and that is that years of chronic porn use may be altering the sexual centers in the brain, the hypothalamus. Just as overeating junk food to the point of obesity changes the brain's regulation of hunger, satiation, and metabolism, it could be that years of chronic porn use are changing and negatively impacting the dopamine signaling in the hypothalamus in ways that don't happen in other addictions. Such changes could explain youthful ED, low libido, and long flatlines in otherwise healthy young men. Gary explains right here.
Here's how dopamine powers erections. When you are sexually excited, the red dot, which is the heart of the reward circuit, fires up and sends dopamine signals down to the hypothalamus, which is the blue dot. The hypothalamus erection centers send signals streaming down the spinal cord to the penis, producing and sustaining an erection. Here's the key point. If dopamine signaling is well below normal, either in the red dot, called the nucleus accumbens, or the hypothalamus, the message is weak, and so are erections. A new Italian study confirmed this hypothesis. Scientists compared two groups of men with erectile dysfunction. First, they had men with an obvious physical cause, and then secondly, they had men without any known physical cause. The group without a known cause had less gray matter, which means fewer nerve connections. Guess which parts of the brain were affected? The reward center in red, the hypothalamus in blue. Less gray matter translates into less dopamine signaling, which is desensitization, a major player in porn-induced sexual problems.
So it's completely logical that something similar is going on with porn-induced sexual dysfunctions and the flatline. Whatever causes the flatline, it's clear that this phenomenon is unique to heavy porn use, as sexual abstinence typically isn't associated with a severe drop in libido. Quite the contrary, actually. Here is what we do know. If porn is the cause of your flatline, abstaining from porn is the cure. Now, a frequently asked question: how long is the flatline? There's no answer for this, as everyone's brain is different. You can look to others' rebooting stories as a guide, but just know that no one has your exact genetics and your exact experiences. In fact, a study on primates using cocaine found that the amount of substances they did wasn't correlated with recovery times and regaining their dopamine signaling, suggesting that there was some genetic differences in recovery time. There's so many other variables that will affect recovery, like the age you were when you first started watching porn regularly, the way you watched porn. Some guys watch porn with multiple windows and tabs open, being bombarded with novelty. Edging to porn is the worst. Edging is where you watch porn for a long time, keeping arousal high right before you go over the edge and ejaculate. Whether or not you had past sexual experience. Sexual conditioning is far more malleable if you've already had and established normal sexual experiences. One study that trained rats to ejaculate quickly by cock blocking them and pulling the female rats out of the cage after they only had sex for a minute found that the rats that didn't have any sexual experience before the study continued to ejaculate quickly after the study, even when they were given unlimited time for sex. The older rats who had established sexual experience before the study went back to normal ejaculation times. The point is that early sexual conditioning matters, and it can be difficult to reverse. With all of that said, many rebooters will recover and get out of the flatline within the first 3 months. Some, especially those who grew up using internet porn all through their adolescence, might take up to 6 months or even longer. We've seen some guys take up to a year or more. Be patient. Now, recovery is not always linear. It looks more like this. Some good days are often followed by bad days, but overall, as time goes by, things will get better and better if you stay the course. Many rebooters go in and out of flatlines several times during recovery. Regardless of how long it takes, have hope. The brain can always change. As far as we know, everyone that's been successful in staying away from porn has seen improvement and ultimately recovered. Be consistent. Avoid all artificial sexual stimulation. Avoid anything that may be subconsciously arousing you and activating porn pathways in your brain. Whether it's Twitter, Instagram, scrolling dating sites for kicks, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, nudes. Whatever it is that you're seeking for a sexual dopamine hit on a screen, avoid, because it may slow down recovery. My motto is, if it ain't real, no deal. Do not test with porn. You already know the answer from the last time you watched porn, and porn is the problem. If your dick worked with porn, but now feels lifeless and dead since you quit, you know you're most likely in a flatline. One thing I will add is some guys that feel stuck in a flatline for a really long period of time may find masturbation beneficial as long as it's with no porn and no porn fantasy, just using sensation alone. Some rebooters have reported that gentle masturbation helped spark up their libido again. But if you decide to do this, make sure you use your
One little bottle of spermicidal lube?
Yeah, 1 little bottle of spermicidal lube.
Now, there are often two parts of recovery. The first part would be rebooting, regaining sensitivity in your reward circuit and letting porn pathways wither away and weaken, and rewiring. For longer flatliners and longer rebooters, you may have to rewire your arousal template back to a real partner. Rewiring doesn't have to mean attempting sex. Anything like cuddling, kissing, massage, or simply enjoying time around and spending time with a real loving partner may all help rewire you. In short, spend less time getting connected online and more time getting connected with people in real life. I did a lot of rewiring with my girlfriend throughout my recovery process, and I found it extremely beneficial, and I just tried to enjoy life and other things as much as possible. Your attitude behind recovery is essential. A lot of successful rebooters look at this process as an opportunity to become a better version of yourself in all areas of life. I highly recommend learning something new, enjoying new things, take up a new sport or learn a new instrument, engage in beneficial stressors. Things like intense exercise, meditation, and intermittent fasting have all been shown to increase dopamine receptors and help regulate your mood and reduce stress and anxiety. Now, there's one more thing that's difficult to explain and answer about flatlines, and that's that some guys report that ejaculation sends them back into a flatline temporarily. My advice, and the advice from many other successful rebooters, is to take things slow. Treat the recovery process like a broken bone or a sprained ankle. Give it time to rest completely and then slowly ease back into things. When I started having sex again, I spaced my orgasms out in an attempt not to overstimulate my brain. Allowing some time in between orgasms seemed to help keep me from dipping back into the flatline. I also found slow, gentle sex without the goal of orgasm pretty beneficial. This is called carezza, and it might be worth a try if you're struggling with the flatline for a long time. Just a suggestion though. Everyone at the end of the day has to do what is best for you. If you do decide to have an orgasm, enjoy it. Sexual contact and experience with the real person is beneficial and it helps you rewire. It's a step in the right direction. Don't overthink things, keep it simple. The main thing, the only thing, is avoiding artificial sexual stimulation. As long as you're keeping it real, you're on the road to recovery. Alright y'all, that's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you want help and support and encouragement on the recovery process and a free place to journal, check out our website, rebootnation.org. If you'd like more scientific information on porn's potential impact and the science behind recovery, check out yourbrainonporn.com. And if you've benefited from any of my work or other videos on this channel, or want to help me keep my website free, please consider supporting me in my mission of raising awareness and helping others. I'm now on Patreon. All right, y'all, that's it. As always, much love. Keep trucking. Bye.